Alright, it's time to get some fluids in this K-Swap CRV. Can't wait on the exhaust any longer. I was kind of hoping to have that in before running it up to temperature, just because it's going to be obnoxious as f***, but whatever, got to get on with it. Before I do though, a huge thank you to Cherie here at the local Repco in New Zealand, Nelson Repco. She was kind enough to sponsor me with some decent jack stands, because the ones I had were kind of shite, and some coolant, which is hugely helpful. And also a big thanks to Jace over at Century Batteries here in Nelson. They were kind enough to provide a battery, because the old one was kind of shit, and with all this new stuff, might as well have a decent battery to go with it. Power steering was just local here at Honda, but trade discount from Aaron and Scott. So yeah, big cheer, lots of support in this one. Let's get some fluids in this and annoy the neighbors. Okay, I've got K-Pro set up in the car. I think the first thing to do is start with the power steering fluid. We'll just run that through it. It's going to be quite loud, so I'm not sure how much this will be able to record sound-wise. So we'll start with the power steering, check for leaks, and then move on to coolant. I think my intake air temperature sensor is picking up heat. That should get some cool air across that intake air temperature. Holy fuck. Well, at least the fans are working. And I think we successfully bled this. There's no temperature signal going to the dash though. I'm gonna have to figure that out. Okay, so we've got a few issues. First one is this is leaking from this joint here, I think it was, and it was also leaking a little bit there. So I'm going to pull that apart and probably put some 3-bond on it, because I don't know if the threads are good enough for Teflon, and that way I know it's definitely sealed and it'll stop also moving, which is kind of pissing me off. That's what you get for buying cheap stuff. Otherwise, seems to be doing okay. Second issue is, you probably heard that the idle is hunting. Apparently it's quite common for the air idle control valve down here on the bottom of the throttle body to get caked with carbon, especially when it's been sitting for a while. So I'm going to have to hopefully fix that just by tapping on it and spraying some shit in it. I don't really want to pull it apart. The other issue I'm having is to do with the temperature sending unit for the gauge on the cluster. I'm not seeing anything happening. The coolant housing I have down here, or the thermostat housing, is one of those kind of K-tune billet ones, and it's bolted to the plastic side of the OEM, not to the block. That, I've been told, could be causing an issue with the sensor not being able to find ground, because I guess it grounds through the actual sensor itself. So what I've got is an alligator clip on the sensor and to this ground on the engine, to see if that's going to solve my issue. Otherwise it might be something to do with my wiring, or it could be a combination of the two. The other possible cause might be a grounding issue. I have got some pretty good grounds on this side of the engine, but I was running a ground from here over to here, and I'm sure that was the ground location off the RD5, but maybe it wasn't. Been advised to go off the timing cover, so what I've done is I've bolted it here, and then you can't see it, but down here on the timing cover I'm going to a ground there. Bond cured overnight, so now let's put some more coolant in it, and the idle air control valve. Give that another tap while it's running, see if the idles finally come back to normal, and start building some temperature and see if this temperature sending unit is getting what it needs in terms of grounds and all that kind of stuff, or I have to jump into looking in the wiring. Let's pull this forward. Okay, we've got the temperature on the dash, the hot cold meter going up and down now. So the issue was the grounding of that sensor. So I've got the sensor bolted to the billet housing and then bolted to the plastic housing. So there's no way for it to actually get to ground, which makes sense, kind of a oversight by me. But that's going to work. So we might be able to ground the entire billet housing, or I might have to come up with a way to ground each individual sensor. I've got the fan switch relay and the temperature sending unit on there. So at least that's progress. The wiring isn't bad. So now the next, I've just got this idle air control valve hunting still. So I need to see if I can break it loose. Apparently they build up with carbon, and yeah. So I'm going to go underneath and hit it from underneath. Okay, there's still something weird going on with the idle air and throttle control, but we'll cross that bridge later. Got no coolant leaks. So I think just get this burped for the last time, and then chuck a radiator cap on it and an overflow bottle. Okay, I've just zip tied the old CRV overflow here, ran a line to here. Let's pull to the top. Right, now this is going to be the first time putting the whole system under pressure. Right, let's run it up and see if anything explodes. Well, it survived the pressure test, and nothing's exploded. That's good. Still having a idle issue, so I think that idle air control valve might just be really caked up with carbon. So one thing still to tackle, but at least we're getting temperature to the gauge and we're getting the fan switch working, which means a ground that I just put on that alloy housing to the block has worked just fine. So let's have a quick look at what I've done there. Okay, so here's the issue. This is, ow, fuck, that's hot. Jesus, fuck me. This is the issue. That billet housing right here, that swivel neck housing that I've got the fan switch control and the temperature sending unit from the B20 to the gauge cluster, that's attached to a plastic housing back here. So it's actually got no way to ground. So what I did was I grounded the back of the sensor using an alligator clip and then the other end of it to ground on the engine. And the temperature gauge came to life. So yeah, wasn't able to ground through that. So now what I've done is I've put a bolt through one of the spare holes on this, one of the unused ones, I guess for another type of thermostat housing. Bolted on a spare ground that I had from an old engine and ran it to here on the block, and now it all works fine. And what I was doing before with the hammer and stuff is just up here. You see all those marks where I've been beating the shit out of it? That's the idle air control valve, and they get full of carbon, and then the motor can't actually turn the valve to adjust for, I guess, essentially a vacuum leak. So what I've been doing is hitting it, and it has improved, but it still gets stuck. So my next course of action, if I can't get it to unstick fitted to the underneath of the throttle body here, I'm going to have to pull it apart, or see if I've got one over there on one of the spare engines that's pretty much identical, or it is identical. We'll replace it and rebuild that one and then swap them out. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Just want to make a shout out to Shane Cox and Jake Yord. Hope I got those names right. You guys were both very helpful in helping me troubleshoot why the gauge wasn't working, the temperature sensor. But yeah, anyway, that's going to do it for today. We'll see you next week with the exhaust ready to go and hopefully taking this on its first drive. So make sure you subscribe, like, share, do all that good stuff. Almost at 1,000. Let's make a push for that and see if I can turn this into a job. Cheers. See you in the next one. Oh, and Ben, I hope you're hungover as shit.